Today I'm going to try to draw this clock tower in Nafplio, Greece, and hello from Greece. I landed in Athens this morning, jumped on a quick bus to the city, followed by a less quick bus to Nafplio, and now I'm here. I found a church to draw, because of course I did, and I'm feeling pretty excited because of just how different this is from all of the others that I've recently drawn in Georgia. However, I've decided to ignore the rest of the church in favor of just this tower, as it's the initial thing that grabbed my attention. Real quick, if you're new here, I'm learning to draw while I travel the world, and if that sounds interesting to you at all, fantastic. If you could go ahead and subscribe to the channel, I'd appreciate it. Then tell every person you've ever met. That would probably be helpful. Neat. So, as I love to do, and you'll know this if you've been around a while, I'm starting at the top of the tower. This is actually something I haven't done for a bit, but I figured since I'd be omitting the majority of the church and surrounding context, it wouldn't really matter where I started or how much I might run off the page or any of that. Also, while this may be my first drawing from Greece, that doesn't really mean much of anything. I've kind of come to terms with the fact that none of these have any individually intrinsic value, at least any more than any others. So thankfully, I wasn't feeling pressured to make this special or over-the-top precise or anything like that. I do give it as much attention as I think it deserves, but not because it's day one. I've had a handful of day ones at this point, and I think they pretty much always turn out a little weird, so I'm foregoing the concept entirely and just pretending it's day two. That said, being such a different architectural design, I did find myself paying close attention to the small details here. The general shape is extremely straightforward, and that goes for the top bit and the bottom, especially the bottom. But the small stuff, the intricate shapes around the little arches and whatnot, that was significant to me here, especially if I want to draw more subjects like this one. Just like in Georgia, I want to build as substantive a mental model as possible so that for each subsequent attempt, I'll be able to lean on that a bit more so that I have more time to focus on and appreciate the more ornamental aspects of the tower or church or what have you. Anyway, so Greece. It's my first time in Nafplio, but it's not my first time in the country. I was here in the winter of 2023, based in Athens for a few weeks. And while there were some things I really fell in love with, generally speaking, I wasn't a big fan. Athens didn't live up to the Greek capital that I had in my mind since childhood, and I guess that was a little disappointing. I remember being a little kid watching the original Clash of the Titans with my mom over and over and over again, and as silly as that sounds, that was part of my, preconception of Greece at the time. Then I watched Disney's Hercules, which I watched later, ironically, and if anything, that just solidified that idea. As I got older, I obviously came to realize that modern Greece wasn't ancient Medusa's lair, Zeus and his lightning bolts, or sort of scrawny dudes fighting giant scorpions. No, it was jacked Gerard Butler fighting the Persians. It's funny that Greece in popular culture is pretty much just marble and sand and scantily clad men and women on various adventures. Good thing I didn't see Troy until much later. Anyway, by the time I was graduating high school, I was planning a trip to Europe with a friend, and my research gave me an entirely different idea of the country. However, not a disappointing one. At the time, I was, and honestly still am today, a big fan of Rick Steves and his guidebooks and videos. And my dad gave me one of his books called Europe Through the Back Door. And it kind of blew my mind and was the catalyst, or at least the most powerful one, for what I'm doing today. Instantly, my idea of Europe became much more whole. And even though that trip I was planning never came to fruition, I did eventually make my way over here with my wife. And for the most part, many of the feelings I'd felt reading that book and looking at those pictures resurfaced after all those years. Though, like I said, Athens didn't really fit that mold. I think the neighborhood surrounding the Acropolis, which is like tourist central, I know, is pretty nice. but I just did not feel great in much of the city. It's not what I expected. And even beyond that, having spent so much time in so many other European cities and towns by that point, not just watching movies and naively dreaming about the possibilities, it let me down, broadly speaking. However, there was something about it that attached itself to me. I can't even really describe what it is because whenever I start to think about it, nothing seems to fit. The people were nice, but not overly so. The food was good, really good, but you can pretty much find good food anywhere. The weather was pleasant, but it was also February, so what does that say? And the things I didn't like, I thought vastly outweighed those positives. Apparently not, because I've been thinking about returning to Greece ever since. Almost 3 years later, I'm back, and having passed through Athens, I'm still pretty certain that it's not for me. But arriving here on the Peloponnesian Peninsula, well, let's just say I'm already feeling at home. Yeah, so we didn't talk about the drawing at all, really, but that's okay. Let's just call this one an introduction, as there's still a lot about this region that I'm interested in talking about. But as for the drawing, I think it's a really nice first step into Nafplio. I'm happy with the level of detail. I think there's just the right amount of vagueness going on so that I didn't have to fuss over the tree or too much of the corner of the church. And the texture, I think, worked out really well. That corner, though, it's definitely a bit of a mess, but considering I hadn't even planned to include it in the first place, whatever, I'll take it. There were a few moments along the way that had me second guessing, but overall, I think this turned out better than I expected, especially after an early flight and on practically no sleep. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any Peloponnese suggestions, send them over, and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the series. I appreciate you for taking the time to watch this one, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.